that's something I wouldn't be able to do myself until there's a lovable for VC or something like that. But it would be
Yeah.
really, I mean, I would be super excited if someone sent me an email being like, I can come to Fortino for the summer and connect all of your siloed data into one centralized spot.
Thank you so much, Hugh, for taking the time for the recording. And before we dive into like the entire conversation, if you could walk us through like what you were doing before the MBA, how did ESA happen? Yeah,
For sure. Do you want the long story or the short one, somewhere in between?
somewhere in between, I think.
All right, all right. So I won't go through college, but
Okay.
so I actually started my career in venture capital at a firm called Osage Venture Partners in Philadelphia. So it was early stage B2B software investing. So think like Series A.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I think it would be Series Seed. But I had a political science background, so the learning curve was very steep, but I managed to stay employed.
Yeah.
Got through that first 6 months and then stayed there for 4 years, working my way up to the senior analyst position. So I think after 4 years of that, one piece that felt like a pretty large gap was that I didn't actually know what it was like to build or sell anything. So I had a very good sense and great training and mentors on understanding what a great company looks like versus a good company and kind of all the metrics you use to evaluate early stage SaaS companies.
Hmm.
But I it was all theoretical on the operating side. And so I actually joined one of the portfolio companies after we led their Series A.
Yeah.
So it was a restaurant software company called Margin Edge. Um, and I honestly was worried that my high level strategy skill set wouldn't be that helpful in a small startup of 20 people where you actually have to do things.
Yeah.
But you figure it out. And so I ran the payments product there. We built it to help vendors to help restaurants pay their vendors because everyone was paying with paper checks and putting it in the mail. And it worked. We raised another 60 million, I want to say. There were around 200 people when I left, and I think now there's over 1,000 employees. So it's doing really well. But at a certain point, I felt like I'd hit a bit of a ceiling there.
Hmm.
And so that enter Yese, great idea to go to Europe, right? Get
Yeah,
to be in Barcelona in the sunshine.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think when I was at Yese, I thought that I was either going to try and start something or be a first employee at a startup because I felt like being the 20th employee it was already too late. It's
Yeah,
better to go earlier when some of the most important
for sure.
decisions are
Yeah.
being made, a bit more higher impact.
Yeah.
Uh, but I didn't know anything about the European tech sector at all, right? Because
Yeah.
as all my experience was in the States. So I went to I looked around. Venture is a great way to get the lay of the land, to
Hmm.
understand what the innovations are looking at in different sectors. And I didn't really have that kind of broad exposure when I was at the startup.
Hmm.
So I looked at firms in Amsterdam, mostly because my brother was there, but also because they pay better salaries than
And
Southern Europe,
yeah,
and
that's true.
it's yeah, and it just seemed like a lot was going on there, and there was. I interned at Fortino,
Mhm.
and got accepted a full-time offer, I think in January or towards the end of the year. And so I've been full-time now for about 2 months. I
Oh,
started the Monday after graduation
wow.
and have been having a great time. So that's the
That's interesting.
mid-length fast forward story.
You worked in the VC ecosystem in the US, and then like you interned and now are working full time in Europe. So, like, what in terms of the ecosystem do you see the changes or similarities in the EU versus the US VC ecosystem?
Yeah, like so I'm still getting my arms around you know, the European ecosystem, but
Mhm.
frankly, on the surface, there's not a huge difference in terms of the quality of the entrepreneurs and the level of innovation.
Mhm.
So, like, there are some things that get more naturally built in Silicon Valley. So,
Okay.
developer tools, I mean,
Mhm.
the foundational models, a lot of the like I, I like maybe there is Mistral and some other large companies doing that kind of work in Europe, and they seem to be pretty successful at it. But Silicon
Mhm.
Valley generally, for raising big rounds and big paradigm shifts that are,
Yeah.
the foundation upon which all these other applications get built, that might be
Yeah.
more suited to Silicon Valley. But there's a whole host of enterprise and like vertical applications and market specific tooling that
Mhm.
can get built in the EU, and there's really ambitious founders that are super conversant in how to build software companies.
Yeah.
And like this knowledge, like the Silicon Valley, I read somewhere today that it's more of a mindset at this point than a location, and I see that mindset all over here. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Kind of. I get,
Kind of. I feel.
well,
I mean, I feel what you're trying to say is that while Silicon Valley has more of the quick implementation, you see the innovation coming up in Europe now. Did I get that right?
yeah, like I guess it's in reaction to a lot of what I had heard at
Mhm.
Yesé and other places that
Mhm.
Europeans generally aren't ambitious enough or risk tolerant enough. Uh, and there are definitely some structural hurdles that you have to get over in the EU that you don't have to face in the US, whether it's
Right.
regulation or the fact
Yeah.
that selling in the Netherlands is a lot different than selling in Germany. That's
Mhm.
all true. I just think that like I expected, frankly, folks that weren't going to be moving as fast, that might have a
Okay.
smaller ambition. Let's build
Got it.
a, like, if we do really well, we can sell this for 50 million. Like, that doesn't work in the US, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work here either. But people, like, I don't hear that very often in conversations. It feels very similar in quality and ambition to
Yeah.
what I'd experienced in the States.
But okay, taking a step back, you interned with Fortino. So how did that come about? Was it like part of the Simplicity program, or did you do like, your search? How did you find the
Is simplicity
internship? How did you find the
one thing?
internship?
That's a good question. I don't think it's I like getting into venture isn't a super structured process. It's lots of small teams. They don't have a continuous hiring pipeline. At best, it's a continuous hiring pipeline for uh, you know, interns.
Yeah.
But you have these fixed funds
Mm-hmm.
and they pay a fixed amount each year for management fees. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, the only way a job springs up is if someone leaves or if they raise a new fund and it's larger than the last one. So
Mm-hmm.
there's additional budget to bring someone else on board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the stars have to kind of align. That's not as true for getting the internship. So to get the internship, it wasn't through Simplicity. I just looked to use PitchBook, which you actually have a subscription to with
Yeah,
through USA, which is amazing. I think PitchBook is gold. Uh,
I
and
agree.
so I just basically set up a fund search to see who had raised money in like I was looking in the Netherlands specifically. I wanted to see funds that had raised in the last 5 years, which
Mm-hmm.
basically means they're active. If you don't raise a fund every 5 years, it is usually a sign that you're probably not that active. And so if
Yeah.
you want a chance at a full-time role, you want to be at an active fund, right?
Mhm.
And so I did that and then basically looked at that list and it compared it to people that went to ESA on LinkedIn. And so I actually got in touch with uh, I was rejected out. I think I submitted an application to a fund for an internship here, and it was automatically rejected. And I think that happens all the time if you don't have a warm intro, especially in venture. It happens
Mhm.
in simplicity with large companies that you think you would have
Yeah,
a better chance of getting an interview with because
it's true.
you're applying through the Yesay channel, but it
Yeah.
just doesn't work that way, right? So Leon Herrera, I'm butchering his name, but he had done an internship at Fortino. He was 2 years above me at Yesay.
Hmm.
But I just reached out to him cold because I saw that he'd done an internship and then was going to work on their private equity side full time. And he put me in touch with other folks at the venture capital side, and basically went through a case study, met one of the partners at Yesay when he happened to be in Barcelona. And I think he was actually doing a governance workshop at Yesay, which is kind
Oh,
of random. But
yeah.
yeah, we got to meet in person. Uh, and yeah, they I did have to the they're a bit more flexible with internships and studies in the Netherlands. So doing 6-month internships is more common.
Hmm.
So I had to negotiate a bit down to 4, and my pitch was I've done this for 4 years, so the training should be
Yeah.
less, hopefully minimal.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was more or less the case, and so yeah.
I mean, what was the kind of tasks or roles for you during the internship? Was it like sourcing focused? Was it portfolio management? Was it a mix?
Yeah, it was a mix, but like it's funny. I think your job doesn't change all that much as you progress in venture. Like
Hmm.
everyone's expected to source deals and
Yeah.
diligence them, right? And so I was sourcing deals and diligencing them and providing some portfolio support as needed. Think like,
Hmm.
helping out with a cap table for a follow-on round in one of the portfolio companies,
Yeah.
or more general market research. So we looked at a company that was building software for gyms, and we're like, ooh, gyms, that's kind of interesting. Like,
Yeah.
could be one of these neglected verticals that's full of small companies, but together is a massive opportunity if you can figure out
Right.
how to, you know, have a price point that makes it viable from a go-to-market perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, a mix of stuff for sure.
Like the first time when you actually started working with venture capital, you mentioned you came from like a non-investment, non-finance background. So how did you position yourself to be able to work with a venture capital firm?
For the first job,
Yeah, for the first job, yeah.
nepotism.
Yeah.
I my my th th this Osage Venture Partners had invested in my uncle's company,
Hmm.
and it did really well. So I think they owed him an internship for his nephew. And so in my junior year of college,
That's so
I
amazing.
yeah, right. Which, like, I mean, it's ridiculous, but I don't think that's a totally out there. Like, that's not a super unique story in this space,
No,
right?
it's not. It's
So,
really not.
which is really unfair. I'm sorry, but yeah, I got the internship. Now, I earned the full-time job. Like, he didn't make them so much money that they would
Yeah.
hire, a dud for the full time. But I think those 3 months were great just to get repetition of like looking at company after company after company, and
Mhm.
having someone listen to your thoughts on these companies, tell you where you're right, where you're wrong,
Yeah.
and you start developing kind of that pattern recognition. And so like I wouldn't say I was totally ready to be a full-time analyst after I graduated. Actually, I definitely wasn't, but I'd say I was halfway there. And so it probably took 3 or 4 more months to
Mhm.
really get down like what's the difference between revenue and profit and all these other financial pieces that I completely skipped on in university.
This actually helps because somewhere or the other, the connect and networking, sometimes you're able to crack into venture with that and not necessarily through applications, which gets me to actually a very commonly asked question. That is, you see so many job applications on LinkedIn, and then you apply, and within a day or two you get a rejection. So I mean, a lot of people actually suggest networking or talking to, analyst associates. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So I don't, it's tough. Like I my experience uh, is that if you don't have a warm connection, then submitting an application on LinkedIn is usually like just submitting it into the void. Like
Yeah,
it goes somewhere. I don't know where, but I'm not sure anyone sees it. Like
yeah,
I don't so I like my approach was to just reach out directly to people on LinkedIn and starting with people that were more inclined to speak with me. So it's great when you're a student. It was kind of fun being back at YesA because people like talking to students and they're usually,
uh-huh.
I mean, they might be looking for an internship or a full-time offer, but it's fun to talk about yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
so if you're like I would reach out to people and be like, hey, I'd love to hear about I'm a student.
Hmm.
I've spent some time in venture capital. I'm fascinated by what you do and would love to hear more about your experience. And I think in the course of those conversations, and I'm earnestly looking for, to learn, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think in the course of the conversations, like if it becomes apparent to them that you might actually be useful, then they'll bring up the internship
got it.
or the employment opportunity. There's another approach that I think might be better, especially if they don't have as much of a reason to talk to you. There's no alumni connection.
Hmm.
Like if you can actually bring opportunities to the VC firms that they might not see, or
Hmm.
maybe they see it, but the fact that you brought something to them that feels like you understand what their investment thesis is, what their
Yeah.
scope is,
Hmm.
then it's like, okay, this person's a hustler. They're already doing the job, which is essentially finding and engaging startups.
Right.
Uh, I think that's a great sign and more of like a way to stand out as a self-starter and not someone that will need to be trained. Because again, like most of these firms are like there's some large ones that have like hiring funnels, onboarding processes, all this stuff. Think
Yeah.
yeah, but most of the funds are usually smaller. There's no process. And so
Mhm.
in like just from my perspective right now, if I'm thinking of bringing in an intern, then I would need to like I'm just like I'm so busy. I'm doing 50 different things. I would love to be able to just take this pile of work, interesting work, and
Yeah.
just put it on their plate and be
Yeah.
and say run with this and have them do it better than I would, right?
Mhm. Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean it'd be so badass if someone reached out and was like, "Hey, I'd love to chat with you, but you get to talk about yourself. I'd love to chat with you about your experience. Also, have you checked out these three companies? Like they're in
Mhm.
Barcelona. They're building X, and it seems like it could be a fit with what you guys are looking for."
You might actually end up getting a couple of emails after people listen to the recording. They're going to do their research,
That's
get
my
back to
goal.
you.
I'm here for the deal flow.
Yeah. Coming to like the networking bit, what what do you think people get wrong while networking in VC? Is there something that you've come across and you're like, oh, this is an absolute no, and you shouldn't do this?
Um, well, I mean, if the goal is to try and get an internship or a full-time offer,
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to do your homework because I mean, like it's a weird space because I think private equity is more lucrative, like lower risk, but the VC work, especially early stage, is like it's kind of cooler
Yeah.
because you're talking to earlier stage
Oh.
startups, they're doing more interesting things. You're thinking
Mhm.
about like how big can this get? Like what's the market opportunity? Does this founder have the drive? You know, like those
Yeah.
the traits that they need
Yeah.
to turn this uncertainty into opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's a lot of, but it's not a huge industry. Like there's not that much money in it compared to private equity, say. So you have a lot of folks chasing positions um, in a smaller industry. So it is pretty hard to stand out. And for that reason, if you want to try and get a internship or position at one of these firms, I think the more prepared you are, like you just need to be super prepared. And so I guess what people do wrong is coming to the call and asking what venture capital is, or like what do you do on a day-to-day basis. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, have those calls, you need to understand like what that is, but for the folks that you really want to join, like have have a decent foundational understanding of venture capital, and then the
Right.
next level of like what their strategy is, or at least
Mm-hmm.
what they have on the website, so the conversation can move to a kind of a higher level where you're asking more like portfolio strategy questions. What
Yeah.
specific areas are you interested in right
Mm-hmm.
now? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I
Interesting.
guess I I personally, you know, I've had a few conversations with folks at Yesay who are interested in getting into it, and what I
Mm-hmm.
typically do is just send over the list of newsletters that I read like
Mm-hmm.
every day or whenever they get published, you know, just to try and get the vocabulary down. Because
Yeah.
if you speak the language, then it's kind of like, you know, banking or any other industry,
Yeah.
even I think the military, all these acronyms, like it's like these acronyms can be explained in common
Mm-hmm.
language, but they're kind of a sign that you're in the in crowd, that you
Yeah.
know the space,
Yeah. That's
or at
true.
least know it enough to be able to get up to speed quickly and contribute.
Right, right. I think one challenge or like concern that a lot of people thinking of moving into the VC space have is how do I sound like I know what I'm talking about when I've not really worked in a particular industry? So, for example, if I wish to get into healthcare VC, but I've never like had a formal education in healthcare or worked in healthcare, how do I get into healthcare VC? So, what kind of prep or resources should I then read up?
Um, it's a great question. Uh, I think so. I mentioned there's like a bunch of newsletters that I've collected. There's smart people writing Substacks on everything out there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get you super deep, I think,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Mm-hmm.
gives you enough vocabulary and surface level knowledge that when you do speak with folks that are actually experts in this space, you're able to ask good questions. Uh, my like, there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem here because I think you learn the most when you're actually talking with founders,
Mm-hmm.
like experts in this space. So you know, I know Alish is in my class, and he's been chatting with as many folks in the aerospace innovation sector as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
once you start having repeated conversations, you hear the same ideas and words coming up, and you start to create kind of a bit of a mental map, you know?
Yeah.
And so you kind of see that a lot of venture firms, including Fortino, will put out deep dives or market maps that they've made. And our most recent one was in industrial software for like industry, hard industry. So
Interesting.
think like using IoT sensors and the data coming off of those to do better quality assurance and reduce the like predictive maintenance on machines to reduce downtime. But
Mm-hmm.
that comes from first doing your high level reports and reading through a bunch of articles. And then once you have that, you're able to speak with experts and ask good questions. And it's really the experts and the people operating on the ground who are able to get you a lot smarter, a lot quicker. Um,
Fair enough.
so, I'm not sure what I would like if I was, and maybe this is like part of the question, but if I was looking at venture capital firm, like I can't, I had already spent enough time in business software that I was fluent enough
Mm-hmm.
when I was trying to get a job in venture outside after the MBA. But
Mm-hmm.
if I was trying to break in, yeah, I think I would try and again like get as much as I can do on my own with ChatGPT and just smart
Yeah.
Substack writers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then try and use the fact that I'm a student to reach out to companies
Mhm.
and VCs and kind of get more of an insider view.
One common misconception that people have about venture capital, according to you.
What are common misconceptions?
Yes,
Huh. Can I change the question slightly?
sure.
So like and I haven't fully thought this out,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, I was talking to Wouter, he's the investment director in the office in Amsterdam. And you know, you can go so deep. So like we're a broad business software investor. You can
Mm-hmm.
go like I'm a bit skeptical of some of the, you know, we are experts in fintech or we are experts in X or Y or Z. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty hard to remain. You get exposure to a ton of companies in a space if you're targeting a specific space,
Yeah.
and it's definitely going to make you a little better at, you know, identifying value in that
Mm-hmm.
space. But like I'm not sure. I still think that the best ideas are going to be coming from the founders. Like this idea of thesis investing, I think
Yeah.
it can be, I think it makes sense if you stay at a high level and say, you know, AI is going to completely change how diagnostics work in
Mm-hmm.
healthcare. And
Yeah.
so we should be looking at companies in that space. That makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
The more granular you get, I think that there's less to see. Like I'm not sure that's a great strategy because it's the operators and founders on the ground that
Yeah.
are dealing with this on the day to day and are better positioned to do that. And so this is a long-winded way of saying like what's important as a VC investor for a founder? Is it that they're experts on the space? Is it that they're experts on go-to-market strategies? Because they've seen a lot of, you know, go-to-market engines and have seen how they work for different products and ICPs. Uh, I think an underappreciated element is just the trust factor. You know,
Interesting.
like there are folks that may not be like the biggest experts, but these are people that are going to be on your board for, I don't know, 5 to maybe 10 years or even longer. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so having someone who's like highly responsive, like supportive and candid and trustworthy, I would, as a founder, value that a ton. Uh, and it's hard to really convey that
Mm-hmm.
as a VC. I think it's something that you kind of it needs to come across in the conversations. And obviously, once they cross-reference you when they're considering you as an investor, something that needs to come out of it's something you should be look if you're a founder, it's something you should be looking for and asking folks in the network to validate that the VC is someone they can
Yeah,
trust.
yeah. So is the operator model trying to compensate for like the trust and the understanding or like the network that VCs bring to the table?
See, operate. I'm not sure I understand the
The
question.
so the operator model wherein, oh yeah, like we can help you with the go to market, or we know
So
exactly how the business
yeah,
works.
yeah. So let me rephrase all my rambling earlier into something more concise. I think that the value add that you see from VCs is real, and
Mm-hmm.
they usually frame it in terms of customer introductions. You know, we can be a sounding board for your
Mm-hmm.
ideas. We'll support you on the board.
Yeah.
Uh, like we have a platform. You hear a lot about platforms where it will connect you with all sorts of experts. These
Yeah.
things are real and they are helpful, but they're not going to make or break the company. What can break a company is bringing a snake onto the board, even if they come with a platform. And
Yeah.
so my hot take here is that in terms of priority, I would first focus on like compatibility and trust and kind of the feeling you get when you're speaking with the founders. And I think
Yeah.
that's worth something evaluation, even if the valuation is a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not that different, you want to go with the person that you would love to have on the board for 5 to 7 years, and then
Yeah.
you can consider other pieces like that's a must. And then you can consider platform and customer intros and
Mm-hmm.
are they
Mm-hmm.
going to help me raise my next round and pieces like
Fair,
that.
fair enough. It's an interesting point because more and more VCs, like their proposition is becoming, you know what, we're the operators. We can build the business alongside you, and while that is important, it's as important to have someone on the board or like someone as an investor who you can trust and will, for lack of a better word, like not cause problems
Yeah,
later.
yeah, totally. Totally. This might be worthwhile.
Mhm.
So there's like um there's different VC models, right?
Mhm.
So like you said, a lot of smaller VC firms are narrowing in on like we focus on crypto, we focus on
Yeah,
fintech,
yeah,
or we focus on a specific part of fintech.
yeah.
And that specialization is necessary because the tech ecosystem has gotten too large to be small, like really small and generalist
Mhm.
in most of the developed markets. And so
Yeah.
you see in Europe, like smaller firms are moving. You either raise a big fund and become and then you can remain generalist,
Mhm.
or you stay smaller and you start realizing where you have a better network and a bit
Right.
more expertise, and you can focus a bit more on those areas.
Mhm.
Uh, so like that might be something to consider if you're considering going into venture capital. If you have any background before YesA
Mhm.
in healthcare or in, I don't know, cybersecurity, like there
Mhm.
are opportunities to find places that really align with what you do. The other thing I'd mention is I think a lot of VCs are trying, I mean, again, it's small teams and they're trying to figure out how to leverage AI, right? And
Mhm.
so we're putting a ton of effort into that ourselves.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah.
evaluating all the tools that are being used at VC firms to figure out what best practices are.
Mhm.
So I think there's an interesting wedge to get into VCs that wasn't there before, where you're
Mhm.
more focused on data and you're able to grapple with data,
Yeah.
connect things to APIs and build these automations on N8N
Mhm.
or some of
Mhm.
the other orchestration platforms. So
Yeah.
that's something I wouldn't be able to do myself until there's a lovable for VC or something like that. But it would be
Yeah.
really, I mean, I would be super excited if someone sent me an email being like, I can come to Fortino for the summer and connect all of your siloed data into one centralized spot, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can layer on some
Yeah.
VC specific LLM and get a bunch of automation and insights out of that. So
Fair. Fair.
yeah.
So basically, I feel all through the conversation, one thing that stood out, at least for me, is try and show how you can add to the firm. Like, obviously,
Yes.
there's the job description, and there's like something that's outlined, but over and above that, or like something from your end without the company having to tell you, given that these teams are small teams. So they don't want to have to find the work for you. Like you should just already
Yeah,
be there
yeah,
with like, you know what, I can improve this for you.
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. And the other option, like I was thinking about your question earlier, and I feel bad saying you should just read books and then try and reach out to people. Like if getting into VC, like you don't need to get into it right after your essay.
Hmm.
Like one way you can do it is trying to get involved in the local tech ecosystem. And I think
Hmm.
just working at a cool company,
Yeah.
one that, has a compelling founder, early stage, maybe has
Hmm.
raised a little money, like
Hmm.
that looks great, right? Because you're able to, you get domain expertise, you
Yeah.
get operating experience. I'm not sure operating experience makes you a better investor, but it gives you some empathy that you didn't have
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and that can help win deals. Uh, Compared to someone who's just, a dude in a Patagonia vest, who knows SaaS really well and all the metrics, but is basically a glorified SaaS accountant
No,
and
yeah.
can't really
Fair.
speak to what it's like to actually be in a company.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough. No, that's
like
an interesting point.
a chief of staff role would be amazing for that, or
Yeah.
product management, something where you're getting more of a strategic view across multiple
Yeah.
functional areas.
It's true, and I like that you brought this point up because, like a lot of us, we tend to think, you know what, if I don't get into VC after ESC, I'm not gonna get into VC. Like I've lost my, I don't know, window of opportunity. So I like that you brought this up because it's like you can get into VC a couple of years down the line after ESC. It doesn't end here.
Totally, totally. And you've got me on a roll now. It's not just, so there's like the venture capital firms, right? But there's
Yeah.
corporate venture capital firms. And
Mhm.
honestly, that might be an amazing,
Yeah.
like they have an edge, right? Because
Yeah.
you can, you've got a whole, like Johannes last year interned at Hitachi Ventures. They have massive companies. You can validate
Yeah.
these opportunities through your own uh like
Right.
divisions, and they
Right.
could be potential customers as well. Like so if that's done well,
Hmm.
you invest in a company with a million in revenue just by Hitachi becoming a customer of this investment, the
Right.
valuation should go like that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So there's corporate VC, there's tons of that. There's
Hmm.
also like the incubators and accelerators.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a different kind of work, but it gets you a ton of exposure to founders. You can build your network. And I
Hmm.
think like ultimately, like there's two sides of VC. There's your judgment to
Hmm.
invest in the right deals, but first you need access to deals. And that means having network
Yeah.
and just being a hustler on that side.
Hmm.
And so just being in those incubators or accelerators and helping out folks starts to build that network. And then obviously the side I have zero exposure to has been on the fundraising side, like talking to LPs.
Yeah.
But when you're getting started, it's really more on the deal flow side, and that's like
Interesting.
access plus judgment, and you'll get the judgment over time. The access
Hmm.
is essential.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This, that's so interesting. Like there's so many different facets where you can actually be part of it. It just doesn't have to be like startup analysis.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And there, I I don't know how often this switch is made, but and I know I was giving guff about the platforms, but
Hmm.
like I said, the platforms are real, and
Yeah.
especially at the larger funds. And
Hmm.
so they need folks who are able to step into their portfolio companies and help advise or set something up,
Yeah.
whether it's marketing, the
Hmm.
go-to-market motion, maybe some product work. And so that's another option. Like if you just like love startups and want to get into that space,
Hmm.
that's a pretty neat thing as well. I'm not sure how that transition to the investment side would work, but
No,
you know,
fair
you
enough.
get creative. No, I was just gonna say I've even seen some folks who basically like if you don't have a fund, you don't have money
Hmm.
to invest in,
Yeah.
you could potentially build a portfolio by providing some sort of service very early in the startup's life. So like
Yeah.
would think like why like there's incubators and accelerators
Like a
that
venture studio?
yeah
Yeah.
like you could do a venture studio or like a much more lightweight version is
Hmm.
providing some sort of consulting in
Ah, okay.
exchange for uh, equity instead of
Hmm.
cash or a
Yeah.
mix. But if you could do it in a way where you're basically building this shadow portfolio where you're picking
Interesting.
companies that you would love to invest in, but you
Yeah.
don't have the cash. And so you're able
Hmm.
to invest your time and talent, receive
Yeah.
probably a negligible amount of equity for it, but it basically shows that you understand how operations work and you work with the best companies, and then it would be a logical extension of that work to have actual capital raised that you could put into the companies and
Interesting.
get real equity stake for. So
That'd be interesting. I know accelerators who do that at like a much larger scale, who have like these centers of excellence programs. So after your like their portfolio company, you can tap into like either their marketing team or fundraising team or whatever to
yeah,
help like the startup scale up. But I
yeah.
think what you're mentioning is at like a smaller scale where it validates the
It's just
proposition.
me, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fair enough. You did mention that there are quite a few, newsletters that you send across, and you've sent it to me also. But what is like, if you had to name one or two newsletters or like podcasts that you swear by, like that you
First of
really
all,
really like?
were the did you read any of the stuff?
I did, I did. I prepped
Is,
for my
is
interviews using those.
it does help,
It
right?
helps,
Like you
yeah,
start
it
you,
helps,
you
yeah,
start seeing the same things over and over again.
for
So
sure.
like Dan Primick, uh his Axios newsletter, I
Mm-hmm.
forget what it's called, Pro Rata, is
Pro rata, yeah.
like you need to read that just because
Mm-hmm.
at the very least to just see who's getting funded, right? And then you
Yeah.
can look, it has a little blurb and tells
Mm-hmm.
you what each company does
Yeah.
and how much they raised and from who. And so you just start recognizing, oh, like why do I keep saying this A16Z thing? And it turns
Yeah.
out they're a big investor, right? Um, I I've really enjoyed reading Not Boring. Yeah, like I mean, he's been writing some stuff more recently about telepathy and spirituality, and so it's a little off what he was originally writing about, but his
Yeah.
company I mean, it's interesting and it's out there. His company deep dives rock. I think it shows the level of depth you should aspire to when
Mm-hmm.
looking into companies and opportunities.
Yeah.
And the way he goes about, like he's speaking to a lot of brilliant folks and he's able to take their ideas and combine them with others. So like I don't think you need to love Web3 or industrial techno revolution, his
Mhm.
topics. You don't need to love them, but the way he goes about it
Uh-huh.
rocks. And I think
Yeah.
it's super applicable to whatever sector you eventually focus on. If you're into like energy infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
then green fundamentals is
Fundamentals?
awesome.
Yes. The audio and the settings suddenly seems different. Um, that's because we forgot to record an outro. Professional podcasters, we know, but we couldn't miss the chance to thank you for such an insightful and fun conversation. This conversation was such a good one, and we couldn't end the episode without giving him the proper shout out. Thanks so much, Hugh, for putting up with us, for answering all our questions. And for everyone who's watching, we will see you guys in the next episode.